Leon Trotsky is quoted as saying, "Anyone desiring a quiet life has done badly to be born in the 20th century." I know it's not a contest, but even Trotsky would have to agree that the 21st century is showing up to compete. For the Jewish people, 5784 will be written and sealed as one of the most sustained periods of upheaval in recent memory. And for American Jews, this past year shook us to our core. There has been an unease in our community, the likes of which we have not felt in our lifetimes. Our feelings can be summed up vividly by Psalm 22. "My foes surround me. They encircle me from all sides like a lion lurking in ambush." A more modern text captures it beautifully but differently. "Trying to make sense of it all, but I can see it makes no sense at all. Is it cool to go to sleep on the floor? 'Cause I don't think I can take any more." Some of you, I already can tell, know how this ends. You can join me. "Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right, here I am, stuck in the middle with you." All right, no, we just need to make a slight change to the words. For us this year, it's anti-Semites to the left of me, anti-Semites to the right, here I am, stuck in the middle with Jews. So look, after decades of knowing in our bones that we were accepted here in America, in the course of a year, it feels like the foundation upon which we stood tall and proud has crumbled. And it isn't that we didn't know anti-Semitism was on the rise. We did. The ADL has been sounding that alarm with real-world documentation, and Rabbi Buchdahl highlighted this problem where I'm standing right now on Rosh Hashanah in 2018. But this year, it seems different. And it's because this year, anti-Semitism went from a news story to our story. I've heard it from so many of you. Marginalization in the workplace, fear of wearing Jewish symbols in public, children subjected to prejudice by morally confused teachers, university students forced from campuses, one-time friends and allies suddenly distant or even hostile. And then there were the so many moments that sent chills down our spines. Synagogues threatened, Christian nationalists imposing their religion in the public sphere, Jews assaulted on the street and targeted on subways, our homes and businesses vandalized. Where once we felt a part of America, we now feel like the space where we are welcome has dwindled to a knife's edge. We are being squeezed into a shrinking middle. How has it happened? What we are realizing is that anti-Semitism is being fueled by something larger. It's being fueled by extremism. And extremism poses a danger not only to Jews, but to the entire American project. From the fringes of the left and the right, extremist ideas and ideologies are borrowing from one another, creating a fanatical feedback loop. I mean, who would believe that we could ever live in a time when Iran's Ayatollah would stand in solidarity with progressive Columbia students? The right and left-wing fringes are capturing more and more of mainstream America. And part of the reason it's happening is because today's extremists have been given credentialed mouthpieces. This extremism is packaged in reasonable language. Bret Stephens was spot on when he recently wrote, "Few people are more dangerous than educated bigots." That's who we face. Educated extremists, professors and school teachers, politicians, judges and justices, lawyers, journalists, and people in think tanks who are whispering policy proposals. This year has been like a shofar, calling us to open our eyes and to act. And the Jewish community needs to act. We need to push back extremism and anti-Semitism, no matter the mouthpiece that is uttering it. But first, we also have to take a look at where it lives in our own heads and in our own hearts. The famed Israeli author Amos Oz believed that contending with extremism was the pressing work of our time. But first, he said, we are required to, in his words, handle the little fanatic who hides inside each of our souls. Luckily for us, Judaism was designed for this task. You see, Judaism, the one that we practice, was forged by the ancient rabbinic sages. They were highly suspicious of extremism, having lived during the Second Temple period, when Jewish sectarians, fanatics, were willing to die and kill for dominance. And so our rabbinic sages taught that the very destruction of Jerusalem was caused by political and religious extremism. In reaction, Rabbinic Judaism built in these guardrails against zealotry. Judaism demands critical thought and nuance. Extremists demand black and white thinking. Judaism acknowledges more than one righteous path. Extremists acknowledge no path but their own. Judaism recognizes the need to compromise because we're not yet living in the perfected world, but extremists believe that to get to the perfected world, there can be no compromising. Judaism is suspicious of power. Extremists wish to grab it. Jews believe that societal improvement is the gradual work of generations. Extremists believe that societal improvement requires burning this world down in order to reshape it by any means necessary. Despite the fact that Judaism was built to withstand fanatical impulses, there are nevertheless some American Jewish extremists. It is probably that one uncle who is coming to breakfast. But if we're honest, truly honest, each of us has permitted some space in our hearts for extremism. I'm not saying that most of us are extremists, far from it, but I am saying that it would be impossible to live in America in 2024 without some extremist tendencies rubbing off on us. And because this is the season of an inner accounting, or cheshbon hanefesh, I've created a shortened version of an extremist self-evaluation. So I'm not asking for hands. We might just ask ourselves, do we get our news primarily from one source, and is that source social media? Do we mostly socialize with people who agree with our viewpoints? Have we questioned someone's commitment to a cause because they called for compromise? Have we felt that there were no common values with the other side, however you define the other side? And have we at some point in the past year joked about, excused, or justified political violence here in the United States? Checking our inner fanatic and curbing its influence over our heart and mind is going to require inner vigilance, because American society is pulling us towards extremes. We can lean on each other, and we can lean on our tradition in the year ahead. We've said it before, but it remains vitally true now, because there are fewer and fewer spaces like this, Central Synagogue is stronger because we do not all think alike. When we respectfully disagree with one another, when we risk the hard conversations, when we challenge our own convictions, we are leaning on Jewish traditions that have preserved our people for centuries. And you should know, the clergy do this. This year especially, we've had passionate and healthy disagreements about how to keep the Jewish community resilient and secure and big-hearted. We've experienced how working through our disagreements, finding common ground, compromising, and challenging each other naturally curbs self-righteousness and stridency. And there is another piece of internal Jewish work that this moment calls us to take on. We have to stop excusing our own side. The fault line in the Jewish community going forward cannot be from left to right. The Israeli foreign policy expert Yair Zivan points out that the most salient political spectrum of our moment is the spectrum from centrist to extremist. Because if history has shown us anything, it is that when the fanatics take control, there is no home for the Jew. Left-wing Stalinists and right-wing fascists both butchered Jews en masse in the 20th century, and they didn't ask Jews about their party affiliations before they pulled the trigger. So once we can accept that our enemy is fanaticism found within any political position, then we can turn to the external extremism that threatens Jews and threatens America. The work of this moment is twofold: pushing fanatics back to the fringes of society, and then putting our energy into rebuilding the alliance of the moral middle of America. Here's the good news. In a year of so much bad news, here is the good news. We have done this before. And I think that's the most Jewish thing, that the good news I have for you is we've faced virulent anti-Semitism in the past. But it is good news. We know what to do. We have a playbook. In the first decades of the 20th century, America experienced another confluence of extremism and fanaticism that created a tidal wave of anti-Semitism. That extremism in that moment posed a very similar threat to American democracy. In response, Jewish leaders recognized that the threat couldn't be met by individual communities or by balkanized Jewish movements. These visionaries conceived and created national organizations that encompassed all American Jews. These organizations had missions devoted to combating anti-Semitism while simultaneously forming deep and enduring relationships with our neighbors. You've heard of some of these organizations born in that moment: the American Jewish Committee, the American Jewish Congress, the Anti-Defamation League, Jewish Communities Relations Councils, and more. If history has a lesson for us, it's this, and this is a controversial thing to say here in this synagogue. Central Synagogue can't do this alone. But don't worry, neither can KJ or Park Ave. If we are going to face the menace of this moment, it will only be through a unified American Jewry. We are going to need to leave our religious differences in shul and our political differences at the ballot box. And even then, the path is not going to be easy. Our organizations are going to need to align on how to best deploy limited resources. But if we can unite behind them, if they can feel like they speak for us, if we can synchronize their work, then we can combat the extremism and the anti-Semitism that we see in schoolrooms and newsrooms, in judicial opinions and with communities of faith, in lecture halls and in the halls of our government. And because we feel like we are stuck in a dwindling middle, the other project of the American Jewish community is to reestablish the vital center of the United States. I recognize that centrism is not 2024's hottest slogan. Centrism has not historically created the kind of battle cry that inspires us to heroic feats, but it may, as one inspired Jew wrote after World War II, be just the thing that preserves the entire world. Therefore, our appeal for a moral center and the values that gird American democracy, they must be clarion. They must be captivating. For Jews, rebuilding a centrist America is not an intellectual exercise, it is an existential task. Centrism, we have to make clear, isn't the middle ground. It isn't, as Zivan said, a compromise between wherever the extremes happen to be dragging society. Centrism has core convictions. It stands for necessary and needed values. Centrists champion decency and civility. Centrists leave room for doubt, which means we can embrace nuance and complexity. Centrists believe you can compromise without being compromised. Centrists respect factual discourse and intellectual freedom. We value pragmatism, or as Rabbi Rubenstein used to say, better to be effective than right. Centrists believe democracy and the institutions that bolster it are the greatest tools ever created to help diverse peoples live together and all of us flourish. And vitally, most vitally, centrists know that there is such a thing as the common good. And it is worth more than our side winning at all costs. We must foster a new generation of prophets and poets, disciples of an assertive centrism, because these are the values around which we can build a strong moral middle in America. In addition to the American Jewish institutions, there are also secular organizations devoted to these tasks. I'm going to post a list of them in the text of this sermon so that anyone who wishes to can get involved. These organizations are already making a difference neighborhood by neighborhood. And they are reminding us that citizenship demands something of us every day, not just on election day, and that we will live in the kind of society that we demand. Jews, at our best, think beyond the scope of news cycles and election cycles. If we wish to preserve the greatest diaspora community in our people's long march through time, the work of weaving American society back together will be our focus for the next decade and beyond. Illiberalism and fanaticism may be in vogue, but they are not where American hearts lie. The extremists want us to forget, but we will not forget. We remember the promise and possibility of this land. It was summed up beautifully by Lyndon B. Johnson. He said, working shoulder to shoulder, we can increase the bounty of all. The day and the time are here to achieve progress without strife, to achieve change without hatred, not without difference of opinion, but without the deep and abiding divisions which scar the Union for generations. That American promise is still alive, and we are not as alone as we feel. This year, we begin to reestablish the moral middle of America. Or put another way, this year we can change the tune. Extremists to the left of me, extremists to the right. Here I am, building the center with you.